Why the hell is the CEO's espresso machine hissing again like it's about to summon the devil? I grumbled, wedged behind the server cabinet, the flashlight clenched between my teeth, and a 2-day-old banana softening ominously in my pocket. That cursed contraption shared a breaker with the HVAC on the East Wing, a discovery I made firsthand during the great caffeine-triggered blackout of 2011. No records. No warnings. Just scorched circuits and finger-pointing. Nobody wrote it down. Then again, nobody but me ever wrote anything down. But I remembered. I always remembered. That morning had started like the previous 7,700. Me, Nancy, unlocking the front door at exactly 6:47 a.m., 23 minutes before official open, with the same worn brass key I was given in 2002. I still oiled it twice a year. You'd be amazed how many executives can't turn a key if the lock squeaks. They assume it's broken, like their logic. The cleaning crew had left gum in the break room sink. Someone from development left sushi in the mini fridge all weekend. The kombucha had detonated. Not my responsibility, technically. Not in any job description. But guess who scraped fermented seaweed off a smart fridge using a plastic spatula and an outdated calendar? Right. Me. Most days I felt like human infrastructure. I held the entire place together, without thanks or notice. Like duct tape, torn from the roll only when the walls start cracking. The CEO still called me reception even though my title read facilities and operations manager. Meanwhile, my inbox was a graveyard of 3,200 unread urgent emails from overpaid technophobes terrified of toner. Things only got worse when they hired Emily, the new HR director. Straight out of grad school with buzzwords instead of experience and a smile as sharp as a blade. She once asked me where to plug in the Ethernet cable. I said, in the wall, sweetheart. Same place your credibility is going. She didn't get the joke. Now, I may not be a social media darling, but I know this. 97% of you listening haven't subscribed. That's like showing up at a potluck, eating everything, and leaving with someone else's Tupperware. Go on, hit that subscribe button. Keeps the lights on and the revenge nice and warm. Anyway, back to the circus. I didn't attend Ivy League schools or wear jackets worth more than my pickup. But I knew that building. Not like a landlord. More like someone who's memorized a creature's heartbeat. I knew which pipes groaned before a storm rolled in. Which thermostats cracked under 70% humidity. Which fuse box whispered like a ghost when you opened it too fast. For 2 decades, I kept that company breathing through busted toilets, dead elevators, and 3 full rounds of CEO-level incompetence. No accolades. No bonuses. Not even a thank you scribbled on a post-it. Once, after I unclogged the women's restroom myself, don't ask why, the VP of Finance handed me half a protein bar and said, "You're a saint, Maggie." My name is Nancy. I didn't bother correcting him. I wasn't trying to be some office savior. I just believed in doing things right. That sweetheart lease, the one that let us squat in prime downtown real estate for a fraction of market value, that was me. Negotiated it when our brand meant nothing, when the office had 5 staffers and a fax machine held together with tape and luck. The founder couldn't even get a landlord to return his calls. Asked me to co-sign. I went one better, put the whole lease under my name. None of them had the credit. I didn't think twice. Back then, they felt like family. And, just like family, they forgot who kept the lights on. Ever walk into a room you've managed for decades and feel like you vanished, unless the printer chokes or a mouse dares show up in the break room? That was me. Invisible. Until disaster struck. Then I became everyone's grandma, nurse, IT whisperer, and exorcist all rolled into one. Until the crisis passed, then I faded back into the drywall. Still, I showed up. On time. Steady. Quiet. Furniture that repaired itself. Then came that Monday. HR sent out one of those cheerful bloodletting emails. Exciting organizational realignment opportunities. Translation. Bend over. In HR speak, that's a velvet-wrapped guillotine. That's how the mob says, take a little ride. And just like that, the countdown started. Not to my downfall, but to theirs. Because while they were busy forgetting me, I never forgot a thing. Not the favors. Not the insults. Not the betrayals. Not the unfinished business. This time, the lights were going out on them. My gut iced over. I'd watched enough CEOs cry into artisan whiskey during layoffs to know exactly what was coming. This time, the guillotine was for me. But I wasn't going to shed tears. Not after everything. Instead, something colder stirred in me, an old ledger cracking open in my mind. Debts. Oaths. Forgotten favors. All of it resurfacing. This time, I wasn't cleaning up anyone's mess, but my own. The calendar invite dropped at 4:58 p.m. Just as I was scraping a fossilized burrito off the copper glass of the executive kitchenette. Subject, quick sync, HR. No context. No prep. Just a bland summons, lobbed into my afternoon like a brick through stained glass. I arrived the next morning, as I always did, punctual down to the second. I wore my gray cardigan with a threadbare elbow and a mysterious stain shaped vaguely like Delaware. That cardigan had weathered 3 CEOs, 1 office fire, and a surprise baby shower that ended in a restraining order. It was my armor. Emily from HR was already perched in conference room B. She gave me a smile too polished to be real, stepmother energy straight out of a mid-tier Lifetime drama. Seated beside her was a man I'd never seen before. Legal, clearly. Slicked back hair, Italian shoes, and a folder he kept stroking like it contained stock tips and salvation. "Nancy, thanks for making time," Emily chirped. "We just wanted to have a quick conversation about some restructuring." That word, restructuring, hit like a sledgehammer to the chest. I'd heard it before. Too many times. I'd translated it for others, held their hands, covered their shifts, watched them walk out pale and jobless while I stayed behind to mop up the emotional residue. This time, it was my name on the chopping block. "We're heading in a new direction," she said with the saccharine tone of someone who's never faced a real consequence. "And I'm guessing that direction doesn't include me," I said, voice flat. She didn't answer. Instead, the man beside her slid the folder across the table with clinical precision. Inside, the usual script. Severance package dressed up in corporate red tape, 90 days of hush money, health insurance until the end of the month, and a non-disparagement clause so broad it might as well have included my dreams. They couldn't even get my name right. Nancy J. Hawkins. Not Harkins. Not after 21 years. "We'll need your badge and keys today," the lawyer said without blinking. "And any company property still in your possession." I inhaled slowly, like I could peel the paint off the walls with a breath. Then, wordlessly, I reached into my bag and laid the badge on the table like a final bet in a crooked game. Next came the keys. 11 of them. Every one labeled in my handwriting, the ink faded from 2 decades of loyal fingerprints. I'd programmed those locks myself, back when I used to stay late just to keep the place running. "You sure?" I asked, locking eyes with Emily. "You absolutely sure you want these?" She gave me the practiced HR face. Kind. Harmless. Empty. "It's not personal," she said. "Isn't it?" I muttered, standing. I didn't slam the door. Didn't set anything on fire. But when I walked out, I made sure my silence left scorch marks behind. The sun outside felt too bright, like it hadn't gotten the memo. The street buzzed with the same meaningless rhythm it always had. I didn't cry. Not in front of them. Not after 21 years of duct taping their systems, soothing hyperventilating interns, clearing sewage from conference rooms, and solving crises with nothing but elbow grease and instinct. They wanted to erase me. Fine. But they forgot what I never did. I didn't head home right away. Instead, I pulled into the Dunkin's coffee lot on Whitlow Avenue, parked under the faded awning, and sat in silence with the engine off. Then I pulled out my phone and called Matthew. Matthew was my old neighbor's kid. Used to mow my lawn. Now he was a real estate lawyer with a Bluetooth earpiece practically fused to his skull and a visible twitch anytime someone mentioned arbitration. He picked up on the second ring. "Nancy? Everything all right?" "No," I said. "But it's about to be." There was a pause. Then a soft whistle on the line. "That lease we drafted back in '02? I asked. He exhaled. "That lease?" "Yep," I said, the first smile of the day curling across my lips. But it wasn't a warm smile. It was the kind you wear when your enemy starts digging their own grave. "Do they know?" "They just asked for the keys," I said. A beat of silence. "Then I suppose," I added, "it's time I gave them exactly what they asked for." When I got home, the air smelled like lemon polish and black and white war films. My way of holding chaos at bay. I dropped my bag by the door, kicked off my shoes, and walked straight to the hallway closet. That's where I kept the file. The just in case they get stupid file. Didn't think I'd ever open it. But here we were. Hot pink folder. Sharpie label. Lease 2002, Nancy only. I pulled it out like I was handling explosives. And in a way, I was. Inside, the original lease. 7 amendments. A hand-signed receipt for the lobby rug I bought when the company couldn't afford chairs. And 3 post-its with crayon drawings from the founder's kid, back when the office was a single room above a Thai takeout. Everything they'd forgotten. Everything they didn't know I still had. And the matchstick I'd been waiting 2 decades to strike. 21 years ago, that company couldn't have landed a lease if their lives or egos depended on it. No credit. No capital. 1 laptop and a fax line that screamed like a raccoon dying in a trash compactor. I remember sitting across from Mark, the founder, in a Denny's booth that smelled like burnt syrup and old ambition. "Nancy," he said, eyes hollow with desperation, "if you don't co-sign, we'll be stuck in my garage. My wife will leave me." I didn't co-sign. I signed the entire lease myself. Just until we get on our feet, he'd promised. Funny thing, we never spoke about it again. After that, I handled everything. Lease renewals. Property managers. HVAC replacements. The dead squirrel we once found rotting behind the insulation in Suite B? Me. I even ordered the carpet. They never took my name off the paperwork. Never asked. Maybe they thought I didn't notice. Maybe they assumed I didn't care. But I kept receipts. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, cracked open a lukewarm Diet Dr. Pepper, and started combing through that lease like I was panning for buried dignity. By page 12, section 9b, I found it. Renewal of lease term shall require written notice from the tenant no later than 30 days prior to expiration. I froze. Read it again. Then I checked the expiration date, August 1st. Today was August 3rd. 2 days late. 2 days past the point of no return. They hadn't renewed. No emails. No calls. Not a single trembling message from legal or a panicked Slack from Emily. They were too busy swapping job titles and congratulating themselves on their latest realignment to remember the one deadline that actually mattered. I leaned back in my chair and a slow, creeping smile pulled at my lips. Not the kind you wear when you're happy. The kind you wear when the universe tosses you a match and the building's already soaked in gasoline. Because it wasn't just that they fired me. It was how they did it. Like scraping lint off a suit. Like I was some replaceable relic, just another woman past her prime with a head full of trivia. But that trivia? It ran the damn building. And they'd forgotten I was still the legal tenant. Which meant they weren't employees anymore. They were squatters. Squatters with espresso machines. I picked up my phone and started scrolling through years of digital breadcrumbs. The insurance policy? Still in my name. HVAC maintenance? Renewed under my email last spring. The cleaning crew only showed up because I Venmo'd the manager under the name Fresh Air Fund. The utilities? Still billed through a city account I opened in 2005, back when flipping the microwave switch at the same time as the printer blacked out the entire floor. Everything that mattered, every wire, every contract, every thread of stability, still ran through me. I could warn them. I could send a gentle reminder. Maybe forward the lease clause with a breezy subject line like, "Oops, missed a spot." But that's not what they would have done if the roles were reversed. No, if I'd been the one who slipped, they'd have replaced me within the hour, with someone 20 years younger and no idea how to reset a tripped breaker without YouTube. So I closed the folder. Poured myself another Dr. Pepper. And for the first time in 2 decades, I chose silence. Let them walk off the edge. Let them taste the abyss. Let the espresso machine be their first clue. Because now, they were trespassing. And I had the paperwork to prove it. I wore my church shoes to the meeting with the property manager. Not to impress. But because they made a firm, echoing sound on marble, and I wanted the building to hear me coming. Anthony, the property manager, looked up from behind his triple monitor setup on the 4th floor. He smelled like toner and stress, and had enough highlighters to open his own stationery shop. "Nancy," he said, blinking. "Didn't expect to see you back." I smiled. "Let's just say I'm here in a legacy capacity." He tilted his head, puzzled, like a golden retriever trying to understand calculus. I sat, opened my bag, pulled out the folder. Original lease. All 7 amendments. Still crisp. Still mine. Right down to the doodle of a flying burrito the founder had sketched during our 2009 renewal meeting. "I want to confirm something," I said, sliding the papers across his desk. No written renewal request was submitted by July 1st, correct? Anthony squinted. His fingers Donald said over the keyboard, the kind of furious clicking that said he'd just realized something very, very bad. No. Nothing from the company. No renewal logged in the system. And, just like that, the silence I'd gifted them became a weapon. They'd erased me. But they forgot the one thing that would have saved them. I remembered everything. I figured they assumed the lease had rolled into a casual month-to-month arrangement while their legal team got its act together. No announcements. No official word. Just silence, comfortable, arrogant silence. I gave Anthony a serene nod. The kind of stillness carved into marble statues. That lines up, I said. Clause 9V converts it to a month-to-month tenancy if no renewal notice is submitted. He leaned back in his chair, which groaned under him like an old door hinge. Technically, yes, he said, hesitating like a man who suddenly realized he'd misplaced something important. I reached into my bag and pulled out a single sheet of thick, ivory paper, crisp, deliberate, expensive, gold-embossed letterhead. It whispered authority. I'm here to formally terminate the lease, I said, sliding it across his desk. Effective 30 days from today. Anthony's eyebrows launched into his hairline. You're terminating it? I nodded. Correct. As the named tenant, they missed the renewal window. I've already secured someone to take their place. He blinked, stunned. Do they even know? They'll figure it out. Their replacement? A venture-backed wellness startup called Bloompuls. Think eucalyptus fog, chakra charts, and overpriced silence. I'd met the founder while browsing heirloom tomatoes at the farmer's market. She had money, vision, and a desperate hunger for downtown real estate. Offered me triple the existing rate before I even finished describing the layout. Anthony ran a hand over his scalp like it might help smooth out the disaster forming in his mind. This is going to get messy. Messy, I echoed, standing, is what they gave me in return for 2 decades of devotion. I didn't wait for more questions. At home, I opened a fresh eviction filing template on my laptop. Calm hands. Clear purpose. Plaintiff, Nancy. Defend Donald. Current occupant, Suite 201 to 221. Grounds, failure to renew lease. Breach of agreement. Unauthorized subletting. They'd rented a back office to a crypto advisor with slick hair and zero compliance paperwork. Never even mentioned it. Just another oversight. Another thing they thought wouldn't matter. I filed the paperwork through the county portal. Paid for rush processing. The confirmation landed in my inbox with a chime that gave me goosebumps. Not fear, satisfaction. Then, as if summoned by fate, HR emailed me. Subject, request for confirmation of returned assets. Dear Nancy, hope you're well. We're reaching out to verify that all company assets, keys, IDs, documents, hardware, have been returned. Please confirm at your earliest convenience. Regards, Emily. Classic Emily. Still CCNG half the org chart, making sure everyone saw her doing something important. I clicked reply all. Yes, including the ones you forgot I still had. Then I hit send and leaned back in my chair. The kind of lean you take when you've played your hand and the other players haven't realized they're already beat. That building had once been something sacred to me. I knew it when it smelled like sawdust and Ethernet fumes. I'd eaten more lunches at my desk than in my dining room. I'd patched its wounds, named its quirks, celebrated with its people, mourned in its corners. But love, when neglected long enough, becomes something else. Something sharper. I wasn't seeking revenge. I was reclaiming what they buried with their indifference. 2 mornings later, I was standing in my sunroom, watering the peace lily that never bloomed, when the envelope arrived. Heavy. Sealed in embossed ink. County Court. Official. Plaintiff, Nancy. Defend Donald, company name, Suite 201 to 221. Subject, notice of termination and legal demand to vacate premises. There was my name in bold, like a flag planted on sacred ground. I hadn't died when they let me go. I'd been reborn. In orthopedic slippers. But still. Across town, a matching envelope hit the company's reception desk at precisely 9:13 a.m. Sent priority. A digital copy followed just to be thorough. Standard process. 30 days. Lease lapsed. New tenant pending. Kindly vacate or respond via legal counsel. But fate, as always, had a sense of irony. That morning, reception was being manned by a temp. Pink glitter name tag, Betty. She glanced at the letter, shrugged, and tossed it in the recycling between an expired box of kind bars and a tangled laminator cord. Meanwhile, upstairs, the executive suite was abuzz with self-congratulation. IPO discussions. Vision decks. Branding initiatives. Someone was giving a presentation about breaking silos and redefining verticals. I'd seen it later on LinkedIn, a slide of a woman in business casual, laughing at salad and pointing at a whiteboard. They had no clue what was coming. But they would. Very, very soon. Visionaries, disruptors, architects of the future, too busy swimming in their own ambition, stew to notice the water quietly draining beneath them. They never felt the current shift. I sat on my couch, the notice still in my lap. Not because I doubted its weight, Matthew had ensured it was legally bulletproof, but because I wanted to feel it. Really feel it. The finality. The quiet violence of it. This wasn't an HR spat anymore. This was a bureaucratic guillotine, and I'd already pulled the cord. There was a moment, 20 seconds, maybe, where guilt tried to crawl up from the floorboards. That building had once been sacred to me. I'd patched its wounds, listened to its mechanical sighs, protected it from winter drafts and boardroom disasters alike. I'd witnessed marriages bloom in that space. Babies announced in Slack messages. Affairs combust quietly behind tinted glass. It had once held heart. But now? Now it was a hollowed-out box filled with people who thought legacy meant slow and loyalty meant in the way. I folded the notice and slid it into my filing cabinet. Right between my divorce papers and 2 parking tickets I'd kept unpaid purely out of spite. Then my phone buzzed. Donald, from facilities. Salt of the earth. Knew how to replace a ballast without calling 5 people. Once helped me corner a possum that had taken up residence in the ceiling tiles over the break room. Hey, you okay? Something's off. Front desk got a legal notice, but no one's talking. Place feels weird. I hovered over the keyboard. Almost replied, I'm fine. But that felt like a lie. Instead, I sent. I'm more than okay, Donald. I'm finally being seen. He didn't respond right away. Probably trying to interpret the silence swirling through the hallways. I could picture the execs, reading the eviction letter, if anyone had even bothered to fish it out of the recycling bin. Probably assuming it was a prank. Or blaming a vendor. They were excellent at outsourcing accountability. Like it was just another service line on a spreadsheet. But the fuse had been lit. And I'd already made sure the gasoline, the matchbox, and the fire extinguisher were all far enough away that they'd never reach them in time. Later that day, I sat across from Matthew in a sterile conference room that smelled like burnt coffee and nervous ambition. Fake ficus in the corner. One of those motivational posters on the wall, success, plastered over a photo of a lone hiker on the edge of a glacier. Matthew wore a pinstriped suit that made him look like an intern auditioning for Wall Street. But his hands were steady as he slid the lease transfer paperwork toward me. All you need to do is sign here under outgoing lessee and again on page 4 under authorizing party, he said. Then he paused, pen in hand. You still good with this? I glanced down at the document. Everything clinical, cold, and correct. Just like Emily's smile. Incoming tenant, Bloompulse Incorporated. Effective date, August 31st, 12 p.m. sharp. Terms, $12,800 per month, triple net, 5-year agreement. Signatory, Nancy. No second thoughts? He asked. Only that I didn't do it sooner. The pen scratched across the page like a blade drawn clean. And just like that, 21 years of institutional memory passed into the hands of a startup with kombucha taps and a Pinterest mood board. Matthew nodded solemnly. I'll file this with the property manager this afternoon. The judge already signed off on the eviction. You'll receive notice of posting within 48 hours. I raised an eyebrow. And they'll have 48 hours to get out? From the moment it's on the door, he confirmed. No appeal. No delay. They missed the deadline, sublet without disclosure, and ignored formal termination. You didn't push them off the cliff, Nancy. You handed them the rope. They built their own gallows. I left the building with a manila folder tucked under my arm. It was labeled closure. Not revenge. Not retribution. Just closure. Because that's what this was now, surgical. Clean. The final, quiet exhale of a life lived too long in the shadow of thankless machinery. That evening, I slid into my car and drove downtown. The city at night looked like it had been polished to a mirror finish, glass, chrome, ambition. It all gleamed, but none of it looked warm. I parked across from the office and shut off the engine. Left the headlights dark. The executive suite still glowed. Dozens of lights burning, probably costing thousands in overtime, climate control, and catered sushi. I imagined Emily hunched over her laptop, designing her next internal culture slideshow. Maybe the CEO was rehearsing an investor pitch in the reflection of a tinted window, a glass of scotch in one hand, a rehearsed lie in the other. I rolled down the window, sipped my gas station coffee, and watched the empire burn quietly under fluorescent light. The building stood still, aglow, oblivious, its glass skin lit up like a showroom window, unaware that the ground beneath it had already shifted. A familiar structure, yes, but no longer mine. Just a shell housing strangers too busy sipping their own success to notice the walls tightening around them. I tilted my head towards Suite 221. The corner office. My old desk. Now occupied by someone who probably thinks HVAC is a mindfulness app. I felt no glee, no triumph. Just a quiet, steady satisfaction, the kind of look you give when watching a man stroll across train tracks with his head buried in his phone. They had no idea what was coming. No idea that by tomorrow, the county marshal would affix a neon eviction notice to their mirrored glass doors. That in 48 hours, their yoga balls, their standing desks, their idea hammocks would be wheeled out and replaced by Bloompulse, a startup built on chlorophyll water and investor dollars. Their sage bundles were already packed. I stayed in the car as the lights inside began flicking off one by one. A ritual they didn't realize was final. Then I drove home. Window down. Air sharp in my lungs. Manila folder beside me like a holy relic. Peace, real peace, found me somewhere between the fourth red light and the memory of my first week in that building. Gratitude, I'd learned, has a shelf life. But leverage? Leverage never spoils. At exactly 8:03 a.m. Emily waltzed into the lobby like a woman late to her own award ceremony. Almond milk latte in one hand. Nude heels tapping out an imaginary applause. She greeted the temp at reception with her usual cocktail of condescension and charm. "Any messages?" she asked, chipper as a chirp. Betty blinked, then shrugged. Something taped to the CEO's door. Kinda official looking. Emily barely registered it. Probably thought it was another passive-aggressive post-it from IT. Just last week, someone printed out a meme of Donald DeVito and stuck it under the thermostat after the room hit 82 degrees. By 8:07, she was climbing the stairs. By 8:08, she stood frozen in front of the CEO's door, mouth slack, coffee trembling. A laminated eviction notice. Screaming orange. Zip tied to the handle. Notice to vacate. Breach of lease. 48 hours to comply. She fumbled for her phone. Dialed security with the urgency of someone calling 911 over a missed spa appointment. Tried peeling the notice off the door, but it clung like judgment. Permanent and public. By 8:30, the CEO arrived. Bluetooth in, shirt half-buttoned. Likely expecting another routine performance-fueled Monday. Instead, he walked into a scene that resembled the opening act of a corporate horror film. Emily was pacing. Marketing staff were rubbernecking. And zip-tied to his glass wall was a document that might as well have been a guillotine blade. He yanked it. Read it. Blinked. Once. Twice. By 9:02, his phone rang. Anthony, the property manager, calm, clipped, entirely unsympathetic. "Mr. Altman, this is confirmation that your lease has been terminated. Notice was delivered via certified mail and email over 2 weeks ago. We received no reply. We assumed your lack of response was deliberate." Altman's voice cracked. Deliberate. You think we ignored a legal eviction notice on purpose? Anthony didn't miss a beat. Would be hard to imagine otherwise. By 9:10, the panic hit. Executives trickled in, each recoiling at the orange paper like it was radioactive. HR scrambled, corralling everyone into the glass-walled war room, ironically named the Transparency Suite. They drew the blinds halfway, only to realize they didn't reach the floor. The entire second floor got front-row seats to the implosion. By 10:15, someone finally opened the email attachment they'd ignored. Emily clicked, scrolled, and stared at the name at the top of the court document. Plaintiff, Nancy. She said it aloud, half-whisper, like she was invoking a ghost. Nancy. Donald, still in the break room, sipping his coffee like a monk, nodded. Told you something felt off. Meanwhile, I was home. Feet up. Cat purring on my lap. Mug of tea warming my hands. My phone buzzing like a hive freshly kicked. Matthew's message came first. It's done. Marshall confirmed for tomorrow. You're officially legendary. Then Donald. They're panicking like ants under a magnifying glass. Never seen anything like it. So proud of you. A few minutes later, a local business blog dropped the headline. Downtown tech firm evicted amid lease dispute. Insider sources hint at serious leadership breakdown. They didn't use my name, but the comment section connected the dots. Someone posted a grainy photo of the eviction notice, orange paper blazing like a flare, tied to the glass door like a final verdict. I didn't reply to the texts. I just sat there in the quiet, sipping my tea, watching the sunlight paint my windows gold. Sometimes justice doesn't come with fireworks. Sometimes it arrives zip-tied, laminated, and precisely on time. Didn't they have some office manager who'd been there, like, forever? Another reply followed fast. Yeah, and she knew where all the bodies were buried. They weren't wrong. Those bones lay beneath 2 decades of invisible labor, thankless late nights, clogged toilets, crashed servers, and crises averted before anyone upstairs even noticed they existed. I took another sip of tea. No one ever gave me flowers on Administrative Professionals Day. No one looked twice when I stayed past 9 p.m. just to jumpstart a router with the tip of a pen. But now? Oh, they were paying attention. They just didn't realize this wasn't the finale. Not even close. The phone rang at exactly 7:42 p.m. I was halfway through alphabetizing my spice rack. Some women knit. I create order from chaos. It's a survival instinct. The screen lit up with a name I hadn't seen since the Christmas party where he forgot mine while handing out bonus checks. Altman, Stephen, CEO. I let it ring. Once. Twice. 3 times. Picked up on the 4th. Nancy speaking. He came in hot. What the hell is going on? You can't do this. His voice cracked, high and jagged, like a teenager caught sneaking a flask into prom. I put him on speaker, poured myself a glass of wine, and leaned casually against the kitchen counter like I was settling into a rerun of a favorite drama. I can, I said, voice smooth as snow on stone. And I did. You should have read your lease. You're evicting an entire company, he sputtered. Do you even understand the fallout? The board's flipping out. We've got reporters sniffing around. Investors. I cut him off. Stephen, let's pause for a reality check. You fired the person who carried the institutional memory of your entire operation. You didn't even stop to ask who signed the lease. He stumbled. We assumed. And that, I said, is your fatal flaw. You assumed everything. About me. About the company. About how replaceable I was. The silence on his end was thick. I imagined him rubbing his temple, pacing in overpriced socks, calculating how much trouble he was in. You blindsided us, he tried, voice softening like he wanted to recast himself as the wronged party. No, I corrected. I responded to being blindsided. You came in swinging. I walked in prepared. I opened my laptop and typed up an email. To CEO at company, legal at company Emily. HR at company. CC, just for space at Donald earned front row seats. Subject, return of company assets, final documentation. Body. Attached is the complete, original lease agreement with all legally binding amendments and notes, including violations related to unauthorized subletting. Consider this my official confirmation that all company-related documents and assets have been returned, as requested. Attachment. Lease termination _MGH signed. PDF. I hit send. Altman was still breathing heavy on the line. This'll come back on you, he hissed, scrambling for leverage. The board. They'll do what they always do, I replied, sipping my wine. Cover their own asses. And if they need a scapegoat, well, Stephen, you're standing in the spotlight. He went quiet. And just to be clear, I added, I didn't burn the company down. I just stopped carrying it. He didn't speak again. After a few seconds, the line disconnected. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just stood in the silence of my kitchen and felt 21 years of weight fall away, like an old coat finally shrugged off. Bloompulse would begin moving in on Monday. They'd already ordered a welcome banner. Your vibe starts here. Not my vibe, exactly. But they paid early, followed instructions, and understood the value of reading a contract. That made them more qualified than the last 3 people to hold VP titles. Meanwhile, the old regime was scrambling to find office space. Rumors spread like wildfire, something about renting a strip mall conference room or converting the CEO's over-decorated condo into a pop-up HQ, internet not included. By Friday morning, they were in full desperation mode. Word on the street was they were cold-calling every landlord within city limits. One exec supposedly tried bribing Anthony with free concert tickets and vague promises of reputation repair services. Another offered him a founding partnership in some wellness-adjacent brand they made up on the spot. None of it mattered. The lease with Bloomfuls was signed, notarized, and already framed on the wall of Suite 221. Their founder was busy choosing wallpaper, something green, eucalyptus-themed, with daily affirmations printed in gold. Meanwhile, the former occupants? Evicted. Like college kids who forgot to pay rent after spring break. Monday morning landed like a grand piano dropped from a rooftop, loud, inevitable, and impossible to ignore. I sat on my front porch, wrapped in the scent of strong black coffee and the crackling hum of an old portable radio playing classic rock hits from an easier decade. The sky was spotless. Birds chirped without irony. For blocks away, chaos bloomed like a toxic flower. Down on 6th Street, the once golden tech stars of downtown were dragging Herman Miller chairs and half-used Keurig pods into a battered U-Haul with a busted taillight and rental plates peeling at the corners. Emily stood off to the side, sunglasses swallowing half her face, barking into her phone like she was brokering peace in a war zone. Someone had taped a wrinkled sheet of printer paper to the truck. Strategic relocation. Sure. And I'm the Queen of Denmark. A small crowd had formed. Phones out. Cameras rolling. The court of public opinion was open for business. Then came the chair. Altman, red in the face, tan suit rumpled and blotched with sweat, lost what little control he had left. In a flash of corporate fury, he hurled a folding chair against the side of the U-Haul. Clang. The sound ricocheted off glass and steel like a sad little gong marking the death of a delusion. Within the hour, the video hit TechSlam. 3 hours later, it was trending on Failwhale. By sunset, it owned the top spot on CringeBay. The comments were ruthless. When karma throws a chair harder than your IPO ever did. Leadership under pressure or just another man-child meltdown? Plot twist. Zoning laws don't care about your pitch deck. Meanwhile, back at my place, a knock at the door. A courier stood there, holding a cellophane-wrapped basket. Organic fruit. Lavender tea. A tiny jar of turmeric gummies nestled like treasure in a sea of tissue paper. On top, a handwritten note in looping ink. Nancy, thank you for the space and the story. We'll take good care of it. The Bloomfuls team. I laughed. A real laugh, deep, unfiltered, from the core. The kind of laugh that comes when something heavy finally falls away. I set the basket on the counter, poured myself a glass of sangria, and walked to the hallway. There, next to the framed black and white family photos and my first paycheck from 1981, hung a small brass hook. Empty, until now. From the drawer, I pulled out the only thing I'd kept. No fanfare. No inscription. Just metal and memory. The original office key. I hung it on the hook, not because it unlocked anything anymore, but because once upon a time, it opened everything. And now it marked the exact moment I chose to close the chapter. Quietly. Legally. Permanently. Thanks for sticking around, Breakroom Legends. If you enjoyed the chaos, hit that subscribe button. Let's keep telling the stories that make your old managers spill their coffee in fear.